what I've seen them do is they'll work with too many consultants who are there to give them ideas, but not enough consultants who are there to push them to implement, which sometimes go by the name of coaches, right? Like sometimes you need a consultant to help you give ideas, and sometimes you need a coach or to push you to implement. And another mistake they make, just like the startups, is they overinvest in new programming and they don't increase their own capacity to manage that programming. I once had a client who we were trying to list a description of every program on their website. And they didn't know how many programs they had. It ended up being like 35 to 40. And then they didn't have a description of every program. And then I was like, okay, just get me on the phone with the person who's in charge of each program and I'll get the description out of them. And they couldn't even, there were some programs I just was in like circles. They couldn't even give me someone who was in charge of it to give me enough to give me a description. And that's a great example of an organization that they had plenty of money, but they just like started new, well, we have money, we'll just start a new program. Meanwhile, they didn't have enough management to handle operations. They needed more support in their human resources department. They had almost no fundraising infrastructure, a very small donor base. So they were dependent on government type funding contracts, and they weren't, but which is not necessarily sustainable. And then they began to experience cutbacks from the state, and they were having to really grow their fundraising capacity almost from scratch.